The best pop albums of 2024 so far. Yes, this year we're adding some extra mid-year lists to the repertoire that already exists. Don't worry, we're still going to be doing the best albums of the year so far and the best songs of the year so far. They aren't going anywhere. You know how much I like to do those best songs videos. That is still sticking around, and they'll be coming in some point in July. But until then, I thought it'd be good to do some genre-specific videos where I hone in on specific genres and focus on what the best the year had to offer in that genre, because there'll be some albums here that maybe I won't talk about extensively in other videos. And you know how much music I like to listen to in a year. I listen to a lot, and I feel like I've got to try and capture more of that in these mid-year lists. So here we go. Best pop albums of the year so far. Let me know what you think they are in the comments. Tell me some other genres I should focus on as well for videos like this throughout the course of July. And yeah, make sure you're subscribed, make sure you're sticking around for more content, liking the video, sharing it, that would be wonderful. And let's get on with it. Wanted to start with Kali Uchis, mainly because it came out so early in the year and it's a really good album, and maybe the fact that it did come out so early has made people kind of forget about it a little bit. But let me tell you right now, this is still a really, really strong album. I think Kali is one of the best in her lane at the moment. I guess you could call her a Spanglish artist, if you will. But there are some really nice flavors of reggaeton popping through and Latin pop popping through on this album. And it just had to be mentioned because she pulls off pretty much everything she tries on this album really well. I would honestly say that the leg of the album at the beginning, where it's just this really like luscious, sweet, lovely vibe, is probably the best portion of the album. And then you do kind of get into the more mainstream type stuff where she has a Peso Pluma feature coming at some point on the album as well. So it's like, you know, she kind of trying to cross over into that lane a little bit. But yeah, seriously good stuff. Really lovely album. And yeah, it had its moment at the start of the year. I could absolutely tell one of the songs were going to, you know, become viral and blow up on TikTok. I'm sure I even said it somewhere, whether it was in a Discord server or on my Twitter. I can't exactly remember. And that did happen for a short stint of time. And then we kind of didn't really get much more hype for the album after that. But I'm here to tell you that it's still sounding really good. And maybe her second best album to date. I think most Kali fans are always going to hold on to Isolation, and that's going to be a really tough one to top. I don't think really, I'm confident that she will ever top it, because that album is just so good. Such a good album, so summery, so vibrant. Again, the features on there are fantastic too, like Steve Lacy and Tyler, like Thundercat. Like, it's such a good album. She really struck a great chord with that thing, but that's not to say she can't continue putting out good music, because this one here is really good. Got Beyonce here, Cowboy Carter. I think initially when the album was announced and the rollout was happening and everything felt like it was going to be a full-on country album, you wouldn't have thought it would be listed in one of the best pop albums of the year video at any point. However, she kind of subverted expectations. It is Beyonce. She did announce as well it is a Beyonce album. It's not necessarily pigeonholed into any specific one thing. And as maybe as odd as that sounded when she initially said it, you can't really argue with what she said, because it is very much that. It's Beyonce doing country, but it's also Beyonce doing pop. It's also Beyonce doing hip hop. It's also Beyonce doing R&B. It's a culmination of everything packaged as I guess a country American flag album that didn't really quite live up to that, but even still, it's really good. And I think the genre fusions that she does try throughout the album are pretty successful for the most part. I just would say it maybe runs on slightly too long. I know that's maybe a weak criticism of when an album runs past like an hour, but you know, only the very few albums out there that shoot for something so ambitious end up being worth that length of time, because I think you could definitely chop and change some of the track list here, take out some of the songs, maybe some of the interludes as well that don't really feel as important as they should be. It's not her best album, but I think the run she's on at the moment is really strong, and I think she's proving that this second half of her career, you know, in terms of album output, is probably stronger than it was the first half of her career. She has 8 albums out now, and I would probably take the final 4 albums easily any day over the first 4 albums. And those first 4 albums have some massive hits on them, so let's not get it twisted. She's always been good, but I at least appreciate the ambition of this one, and I think it brought out some fantastic songs like Bodyguard, The track with Miley Cyrus as well, Hands to Heaven. Yeah, loads of good ones on this album. Eric DOA next is an artist that is championing the hyperpop realm, the emo pop rap realm, and fusing it together in a way that many in his lane are currently doing. You've got artists like Breakance that are doing it at a level that I think is pretty untouchable, but slightly below that and still very high is Eric DOA. His last few albums that I think have been really strong. I really liked his 2020 album, and this one here I think is really strong and didn't really take off in a way that I thought it could have. I think the second track has a really fantastic like two-step beat feel to it that I think could have honestly gone a bit more viral than it did. Yeah, lots of great stuff on here. He might not be the most lyrical, but he's entertaining. He has a great delivery. He sounds really cool and slick. I just think he's a really likable artist that has a lot to offer, and yeah, it's putting out some really enjoyable music at the moment. It's really short, straight to the point. I don't see why you wouldn't give it a listen, because I think you're going to pull out at least something from this album. You were probably waiting for this to be brought up, weren't you? Yes, obviously Brat is in the top pop albums of the year so far. I don't think anyone could possibly argue that. I think it's great to see that it's actually had a bit of a mainstream impact as well, because when we're looking at pop in this video, I'm being quite broad with the definition. Obviously Eric DOA has been nowhere near the charts, but I still think it's a pop album. And Charlie for a while hasn't really been properly near the charts in the way that she used to be. But it turns out that when you give an artist the artistic license and freedom to really do whatever they want and just take the reins and just ditch what the record label expects of you, because that's exactly what this album feels to me, you get a truly genuine album that people flock to and people really enjoy, with fantastic marketing as well. I mean, you can't deny that the way this album was rolled out was really impressive. It got a bit of criticism initially, but I think eventually people just kind of warmed up to it and were like, this is cool. I like the wall that she keeps changing all the text on. I like these extra tracks that she keeps dropping, these remix versions. Like, everything about it just felt so thought out, so properly done. It's a really vulnerable album that really speaks to how it is to be a female artist in the music industry. I mean, if you really want an insight onto what that is like, this album really touches on many types of topics that I think are done so well. Yeah, like her, she's not the most detailed lyrical writer, she's not going to be like putting out the most conceptual things imaginable, but it's still above a lot of other artists in the mainstream at the moment who wouldn't even dare touch these topics because they'd probably be fearful of criticism, or maybe, again, the record label might not want him to be talking about those things and that kind of stuff. But Charlie is fearless. Charlie is Charlie. She just does what she wants. And yeah, so good to see that she's back at her best, because arguably this might be her best album. I keep thinking it. I keep wondering if it's true. How I'm Feeling Now is great. Like, How I'm Feeling Now that's a close matchup right there. But Brat might be the best one. Might be. Maybe. Finally, one of the most disrespected albums of the year, I would say here, Tyler. Tyler's debut album, The Water Girl. You probably only know her through that TikTok trend, and that song did go super viral, and I like that song. I think it's good. Maybe got overplayed for some people, which is why once the album came out, they weren't quite as excited or quite as invested to check it out. But goddamn, respect this album. It's really good. It's some really nice Afro pop blended with R&B, like really, really sweet album. Her vocals are actually like ridiculously good. Again, I think if you just only paid attention to Water being that TikTok trend that it was, you might not have really had time to focus on how good her voice is. Like, seriously, so good. She's got such a great way of holding on to notes. She sounds so delicate. Tracks like Truth or Dare are ridiculously catchy and fun and upbeat. Yeah, I think there's a real star here, and I think it's a huge shame that, as usual in the Western world, somebody that breaks out of like somewhere, a country in Africa, and brings their sound to the mainstream, it doesn't like stick around. It just has that brief moment, and then that's it, and then we move on to something else. But we shouldn't be, because actually I think Tyler has more star potential than people are willing to see her for. And I think, honestly, sit with this album. If you just skipped it because you thought, I don't really care, whatever, no, give it a try. This is definitely one of the best pop albums I've heard all year. Really strong. And that is it from me. As you could probably tell, my definition of pop was broad, it was loose. I know some people get a bit antsy about this kind of thing. I find this stuff to be a boring conversation, to be honest with you. It's like talking about VAR in football. It's like, I'm just bored of it. Just bored of it. Can we just stop? And this is another thing in music. It's like the equivalent of that, where people are talking about what genre this is and how can you call this that. I don't really care. I think these albums very much feel, in many ways, in more ways than one, that they could be branded as pop. Pop, I guess, is shorthand for popular. Yes, some of these albums haven't been massively popular, but hear me out here. It's just the definition I'm using. These are very catchy albums for the most part. I'm just going to go with it. Let me know what your 5 pop albums of the year would be so far. I probably could have given you more, but I thought I'd just keep it short and sweet, straight to the point, give you 5. These are some of the best for me personally. But let me know in the comments what you think. Do you agree with me, disagree? What should be here that isn't here? Check out my Patreon. That would be wonderful as well if you'd like to support me over on there. Have a good day. And goodbye.